Welcome, age of vintage society. The not too palatable tale of a sudden rise to Hollywood fame and the dramatic fall of actress Jean Seberg is the type that would continue to bother her fans several years after they woke up with the tragic news of her horrible death. There were just too many ugly tales that made her death even more pathetic. Like many, I'm wondering what happened to the face of French New Wave cinema. Is it destiny or poor choices that turned her Cinderella image into a nightmare? The tragedy that tormented Jean Seberg's life year by year. The life and time story of Jean Seberg is not the type that would excite anyone. Despite her highly successful career life, this beautiful lady did not quite enjoy the benefit of her talent, for an obvious reason. Jean Seberg fantasized about herself as a movie star. She had to settle down as a celeb after becoming the face of the French New Wave movement. Her role in Jean-Luc Godard's Breathless earned her the much-desired place in the movie world and gave her a prominent status among the most cherished film characters in Europe. But as history has shown, happiness is not always a function of career success. Personal joy and movie fame worked like two parallel lines in her life. While one gave her joy, the other took the joy away, draining her of true happiness. Jean Seberg had to live her life battling depression on and off. With a personal effort she had to endure rather than enjoy her marriage. To worsen her situation, she had to suffer the terrible loss of her child. One key source of her misfortune, traumas, abuses and sadness may not be unconnected with a regrettable development between Seberg and the US authorities, a battle that was beyond her strength, which observers thought contributed to the saddest moment in entertainment history, the moment she decided to take her own life in 1979. And until this moment, no one has been able to provide concrete answers to the many questions about the most upsetting government agenda in the history of America. After making her film debut at the age of 19, actress Jean Seberg became a champion. She somehow got herself involved in upper echelon activism in the 1960s, mainly for showing support for the Black Panthers. The FBI subsequently switched on their searchlight on her, and she finally fell victim to their affront and provocation campaign that continued for about 3 years. A smear that was just aimed at discrediting her character. Found dead in her car and confirmed to have been on an overdose of barbiturates in a French city when she turned 40, the memory of Jean Seberg's tragic death will continue to sadden fans who wish they could turn back the hands of time and bring back this widely cherished beautiful lady. If only she was a bit more conscious. After advancing from theatre productions at Marshalltown High School to global fame, Jean decided to extend her fortune to fighting social causes. But that liberality brought her into a skirmish with then-dreaded FBI boss J. Edgar Hoover, whose affront would change her Cinderella story into a frightening situation. Few other things that could have given her hope, the men in her life, did not help matters. Jean Seberg's romantic life with Clint Eastwood, for instance, in Paint Your Wagon, was a disaster because she was left traumatized. During the filming of that Hollywood musical, it was messy, almost ridiculous even with a high budget, plus the use of destitute drifters and hippies as add-ons after they occupied the shooting location. Although not much success was achieved with the movie, it did not stop Clint Eastwood from holding tight to his love interest. Jean Seberg and Eastwood had a passionate romance on set, to which he later said he adored her so much. The movie we were doing was nothing special, but we enjoyed life, Eastwood said. The truth, however, was that she didn't know much about his repute in Hollywood, leading to emotional pain with the outcome of that affair. It does appear as if Jean never had more than a brief happiness in her love life, as she suffered terrible heartbreaks from one lover to another. Eastwood would agree with her real quality, though appeared as an actress he still saw the normal person in her, a very happy lady. They talked about family, friends, relationships, love, and everything they could remember. She played an important role in my life, Eastwood said, and that was all he could offer. While obsessed Gene Seberg thought the relationship would at least take them to places after filming, but Eastwood had his plan. 1970 was a year of agony and sadness for Jean because the FBI created an untrue story about her carrying the child of Black Panther Raymond Hewitt instead of Gary, who was her husband at the time. The news was a devastating one because she could not have been scandalously pregnant for another man while in a marriage that had a son, Andre Diego. The nosy media picked up the story, and the immediate result was that Seberg went into early labour. 48 hours after that information went viral and delivered her precious daughter Nina Hart-Gary, who died a few days later. Wiretapping, forceful entry at her home, and general shadowing of Gene Seberg by the FBI persisted for years. Things were overpoweringly bad for the actress. Amidst the hullabaloo, she may have also been blacklisted by Hollywood sometime in the 1970s. There was nowhere to turn for Gene Seberg, not even her relationship with Algerian Ahmed Hasni in the last year of her life could give her some kind of solace. The affair did not only cause more complications, but also made her incur losses financially. I learned that Hasni influenced her to sell her second house in Paris for his selfish financial interest, in a deal reported as 11 million francs. He supposedly used the money to start a restaurant. It did not take long before she disappeared from home and out of his reach because of the intense abuse she may have suffered in living with Hasni. Before she peacefully joined her ancestors, Gene Seberg was declared missing for 10 days. After she left her Paris home with a supply of prescribed barbiturates and was only wearing a blanket. It was obvious that she had long been dead before her decaying body was discovered in the back seat of her white Renault car. She was still draped in the blanket while the car patiently waited at the corner of the street. Gene Seberg, born in Marshalltown, Iowa in 1938, grew up being passionate about the city. After high school and lectures at the University of Iowa, where she took lessons in dramatic arts, Seberg decided to go into movies. She earned money as a teenager babysitting and was credited for babysitting a lady that later became an actress. Back then she became an ardent movie fan, inspired by the likes of Marlon Brando. Seberg was said to have once written a letter to Brando requesting he visit her parents' house, and shortly after she became famous, Brando asked to know if the request was still open. With little or no professional acting experience, young Seberg, who was just some weeks away from becoming an adult, won her first lead role in Otto Preminger's St. Joan in 1957, a movie debut that saw her being selected out of 18,000 other aspiring actresses for the role. That outing becomes the beginning of her success story, within the next 20 years starring in not less than 32 films and creating a name for herself in pop culture on and off screen. She had a real accident while filming St. Joan's burning at the stake scene and suffered excruciating burns. Her reaction was so real that Preminger allowed some of it in the actual movie. The media was agog with what they saw in the movie, followed by a series of passionate publicity designed to market her image as a Hollywood star to watch out for, and St. Joan itself got a ruthless review from critics about the film and Seberg's performance. Seberg would later agree with the outcome, recalling the horrible burn at the stake in the picture as something that scared her like a rabbit, as was visible on the screen. An unfortunate one, she noted. But Preminger still believed in her, and he cast her in Bonjour Tristesse. Her acting in the movie also got a negative review, but it did not stop French author Jean-Luc Godard from noticing her, got interested in her talent, and played her as the lead in his film À bout de souffle, or Breathless. The film became a foundation of French new wave cinema, and it gave Seberg instant stardom. Seberg married François Mauriel in 1958. That union soon became horrible for Seberg for its characteristic violent nature, and the two would end the process 2 years later after he directed Seberg's 1961 Love Play, a movie Seberg later thought was a farewell present. A year later, Seberg married Romain Gary, a French novelist who was 25 years older, after Gary abandoned his wife to marry the actress. Their 8-year marriage was a period of much anxiety and trouble for Seberg. At this time, Seberg was famous and was remarkably generous with her wealth, including one for the Meskwaki settlement, a house for black students attending college in Iowa, and a donation to her friend Hakeem Jamal's Montessori school that later put her in trouble with the FBI. It turns out that Jamal was a part of the Black Panther Party, an unfriendly group that crusaded for African Americans through social outreach to the underprivileged. Constant violent conflicts between the group and police led to the death of its founder, Huey Newton, in an exchange of fire in 1967. The rift between the group and the authorities was high, with the death of 2 Oakland police officers in 1968 from an attack led by its member Eldridge Cleaver. So, when Seberg contributed money to Jamal's school breakfast program, she instantly became a suspect in the thinking of the FBI, whose agents kept an official dossier of celebrities with ties to the Black Panthers. With a close watch on Seberg by the FBI, Hoover was so interested in Seberg's friendship with the Black Panthers that he guaranteed that Jean Seberg must go down, and that was the beginning of her misfortune. Between 1956 and 1971, the FBI operated Cointelpro, secret and sometimes unlawful operations to disgrace groups Hoover found offensive. Cointelpro often targeted communist organizations, anti-Vietnam War, feminists and civil rights activists, among others. It is under this program that the FBI monitored Seberg's activities, taped her phone communications, and planted scandalous gossip through celebrity gossip columnists. The investigation was carried out internationally too. While Seberg was in France and even on her trips to Switzerland and Italy, the FBI dossier shows that the agency liaised with the FBI lawful attachés in American consulates in Paris and Rome, which gave information and intelligence about her to the appropriate authorities. But soon the agency came up with the ugly story that Seberg's pregnancy was not from Romain Gary, but from a Black Panther member. It became a major scandal in the discriminatory climate of the era. Several media houses carried the story as the news went viral. It was so disturbing that Seberg and her husband sued Newsweek for libel and defamation of character. The suit asked the court to award the sum of $200,000 as damages to the victim, having been severely distressed after reading the story. A Paris court was said to have ordered the media house to pay the couple the sum of $10,800 in damages, and to refute the same by publishing the judgment in its paper and 8 others, although a report said the case was later settled out of court. The trauma was much on her and the pregnancy that she soon entered premature labour and delivered 3 months before her due date. As the reality of her baby's death continued to torment Seberg, she was angry and inconsolable for the rest of her life. Expectedly, her mental health deteriorated fast, and even as she tried to release her pain on the anniversary of her baby's death every year, as hinted by Gary. That pattern may have continued until she decided to end it the way she did, amidst other troubling circumstances, especially the love betrayals she had to go through. Shortly after her death, the FBI revealed the truth about the dishonest role it played in Seberg's false gossip publication. Fans, friends and well-wishers were angry with the authority for such a regrettable action, and the ills generated may have caused Hoover's successor, William Webster, to make a public statement to douse tension when he said, "The days when the FBI uses derogatory information to combat advocates of unpopular causes have long since passed," and added that the practice was no longer in place. The expose and apology came too late for Jean Seberg. Her parents, Ed and Dorothy Seberg, were flying the American flag outside their Marshalltown home every day in protest until the FBI apologized for its involvement in the smear campaign against their daughter. Seberg's father was so angry that he berated the authorities, especially the FBI, arguing that, if this is true, why in the dickens didn't they just shoot her? Everyone agreed that the ugly scenario that caused Seberg so much pain and suffering is the reason behind her tragic death. Her love for Eastwood was so unfulfilled and shocking for Seberg after she fell for the notorious womanizer. Eastwood left Seberg high and dry when she needed him most. A relationship that would have repaired some of the emotional damages and possibly a fresh hope, unfortunately became a mirage. Many still believe that her love for Eastwood is the reason she filed for divorce from Romain Gary. At the very height of her career success, Seberg made no new appearances in Hollywood films, prompting reports that she may have been blacklisted by the American film industry. Some said she was not happy with the roles she was given, as they majorly focused on her body, but the fact was that no fresh Hollywood roles got to her regardless. Seberg spent the latter part of her life in Europe as one of the biggest stars of the era, but she did not forget Hollywood. She may have found success in the French film industry and resided in a French city. She continued to fantasize about her Hollywood movie career that was cut short undeveloped. This is why critics conclude that her contribution to the entertainment industry is shared between French acute successes and moderate Hollywood successes, attributed mainly to her role in Paint Your Wagon and Airport in 1970, and The Unlucky Failures. The FBI could not leave Jean Seberg alone. She was not alone in her difficulties. And was George Peppard banned in Hollywood? Let's find out.